To buy slabs or not to buy slabs? That is the question. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up a couple of orders that I placed from eBay where I had purchased slabs. And I think that right now I am at a crossroads with my purchasing and my comic book collecting and buying decision making. You know, my last video, I had gone full circle with purchasing raw books and sending them off to a presser and having that presser forward those books off to CGC, and then me unveiling the final grades of those books, and it was really kind of lukewarm and quite neutral. And my hopes were very, very high for this process working out. Even in the short amount of time I've had to kind of recover from that, I have purchased more comic books, and they have all been slabs. Prior to that, I had purchased several slabs here that I'm about to unbox directly from eBay, where again, it's one of these where I go back and forth between, you know, time is money, and how are you best spending your time, your money, and your resources to acquire and curate your collection. And there are plenty of times where I just feel like, you know what, I don't want the hassle or the headache, and I want to just go ahead and get the book in the grade that I already want in the presentation that I'm looking for, whether it be grade, page quality, and so forth. And I'm constantly flip-flopping. I'm sure I will have a run now where I'm dealing with a lot of slabs, and then the storage and organization of these graded books might become a little bit overwhelming, and then I'll go back to raw books. I do this from time to time where I will kind of overload one side and then go back to the other to just try and achieve that balance with my comic book collecting. But I'm definitely in sort of this mood right now, and it could have been, again, the results of that unboxing. I've got another one that I'm ready to work on where I have sent books to a different presser, and I'll be going through that very soon. But I wanted to take a break from, you know, should we press books? Should we clean books? What kind of grades are we going to expect? And I just wanted to get right to specifically buying books already graded. So I'm going to open up these two orders from eBay. One of the orders does have a few raw books in there because I just like to kind of pad out these orders sometimes. But essentially, I was looking for deals. I was looking for books that were on my radar that were ending at auction, not a buy it now, where when I can find books that I'm targeting and I can create a nice cross section between that and really great value where I feel like I'm getting a deal, I'm going to participate and I'm going to try and acquire the books. And I think I got several examples of those. So let me go ahead and open these two orders and show you what I picked up. And then at the very end, I'll show you what I paid for them to kind of give you an idea of why I decided to spend the money on these particular books in these particular grades. Okay, made my way through that unboxing. So I'm going to go in kind of different order where I'm kind of mixing the two orders together a little bit. But I ordered from Port City Comics and the Comic Monster on eBay. I've ordered from the Comic Monster. It's probably my third or fourth order from them right now. They're the ones I talked about where they have the kind of red satin sheet in the background, which, always like when I see their specific product images, I know exactly who that seller is. Port City I've not ordered from before, but was one of those where they were running an auction and looked at maybe the 12 or 15 books that they had and really focused on a couple and wanted to make sure that I won both of those, which I did. And then with the Comic Monster, I'm usually in, I guess, the market to win maybe somewhere around 4 to 6 slabs from that seller, and just kind of got unlucky and got outbid on quite a few. But then noticed they had some raw books lying around and just threw up $2 or $3 bids on each, and I won 4 of the books. So I'm going to show you these 4 books first from the Comic Monster, and these are all Star Wars The High Republic Volume 1, and I got issue 2, 5, 9, and 10. I really think Star Wars The High Republic, once the Acolyte show really gets going and we get a lot of rumors there, I think a lot of material, a lot of content is specifically going to be pulled from the Star Wars High Republic Volume 1. So that was issue 2. These are all great covers by Phil Noto. Here's issue 5, issue 9 with Keeve Trennis right there front and center, and then issue 10, which is a key issue in the series. So I love when I see issue 10 kind of lying around at cover price. And that's exactly what I got all of these for. I'll show you the final price, the final bid on these 4 books. But they were all around, I want to say, about $3 each. Cover price on these are $3.99. And I think, there was a lot of these Star Wars The High Republic were printed. So I think that's why you can still find a lot of these. But like I said, gorgeous Phil Noto covers. And I think they will be of some significance and importance going forward. So that was like an additional just sort of 4 auctions that I won from the Comic Monster. I'm going to jump to the Port City Comics here for just a second, where I won 2 slabs from them. And the first one I picked up is from Devil's Due Publishing. It's an independent publisher, and this is the encoded number 1 in a CGC 9.8 white pages. Now, this one was, I think it was an underprinted series, not a lot of attention when you're talking about mainstream Marvel and DC collectors. And I could not get this variant cover. I did buy, I think, 1 copy of cover A. But this comic, when it came out at the end of 2020, it popped a little bit. It showed up on some top 10 lists as being significant. I think there was some love or some interest in the cover itself. It really does have sort of that, I don't want to say golden age kind of look and feel to it, but it definitely has a certain style. And it was a great example of a book that kind of came and went. So it was selling for quite a bit raw, and then just kind of disappeared, fell off everybody's radar. And I'd love to go back and look at like top 10 lists from 6 months ago, a year, 2 years ago, and just what books were popping and where have they gone. And this is one of those books. And the other one I got from Port City, I think, is another example. And I found both of these at auction. And again, just already securing that 9.8. Did I want to spend $20 or $25 on this book raw? Maybe less. Maybe I could get it for 10 or 15. I think there's still some general interest in books like this, especially from independent publishers. But these are the kind of books I'm on the lookout for. Books that are, I guess you could say, forgotten. And for me, I FOMO'd on this book when it came out in 2 years ago. So now it's kind of nice to circle back and pick that up. So one of my other FOMO books I was able to get from the same seller, Port City Comics on eBay. This is Silk number 2. This is the Rose Besh variant edition, and I got this completely graded in a 9.8 white pages. And I'm not a big Rose Besh fan or collector, honestly, but when she started to come out, this was right at the end of maybe Peach Momoko's, the height of her popularity, where now it seems like there's 4 or 5 variant covers done by Momoko every month. So the market has become a bit saturated with her work. I think she's a fabulous artist, but it's just there's so much of her art out there. And people, I think, were starting to look for, some alternative artists. And a lot of times people look at comic book artists almost like musicians or bands, where they're like, oh, I found them first before anybody found them. And I'm like, I try not to get into that whole game and like who discovered the artist first, who was talking about the artist first. Rose Besh was one of those artists that was kind of up and coming and really kind of spoke to collectors and speculators. And it all sort of came together back in mid 2021 when this book was released. And this was one that I was really interested in and FOMO'd over really hard. I kept checking things from Another World to see if this was available. I tried to pre-order it. I think I checked Midtown, all of these different places, and the book was selling, I think, raw anywhere from $50 to $100. And it was one of those ratios that came out that I think everybody loved. It's an all yellow cover, so there's some collectability with that, where people are collecting certain color schemes. But I really, really thought, in my opinion, this is Rose Besh's best cover. Some of her covers look a little cartoonish or just a little too abstract or sometimes a little muddy, kind of. This to me was perfect. I love the angle and pose of Silk with her sort of feet and legs in the foreground. I really, this is my favorite of all the Rose Besh covers. And I believe in Silk as a character. You know, how she'll be handled by Sony remains to be seen. But I really thought this was great. And I couldn't believe that it was there, that the price had come down all the way to the point of where I got it. When I remember studying these prices from a year and a half ago, watching this book sell for hundreds raw, and I was able to get it here already in a 9.8. So really glad to kind of circle back and get those couple of books. And thank you, Port City Comics. The slabs look to be in great condition. They were packed really well. So you want to check them out on eBay. Okay, back to the Comic Monster for the last two slabs. And it's one of those where, are you really looking for books, specific titles, or are you looking at a seller that you trust and seeing what their inventory is like in the moment? And I think it was kind of a combination of both. So the first slab that I picked up from Comic Monster is Descender #1, and this is the independent story published by Image Comics, written by Jeff Lemire, and this is from 2015. So this is a 9.8 white pages. Dustin Wen on art. I'm a big believer in Jeff Lemire. Creator-owned stories. He's written countless gems and great stories over the years. That some have been adapted to live action. And this particular story spoke to me. Plus, you've got the all black cover, the spaced themed cover, which is always tough to get in high grade. The book looks to be in tremendous shape. So really, really happy with this one. Again, this is Descender #1. And this is just one of those titles where if I see issue 1 already slabbed at a decent price, I go after it. All right, and then the last book is, this is interesting. I was bidding on this book on eBay a little while ago, and I was trying to get it in a 9.2, and I felt like I got sniped at the last second. It was one of those where I felt like I had a really strong bid. It was going to be well under fair market value, but there wasn't a lot of action, and my bid was high enough that, you know, in the last couple of minutes, I was watching the bids roll in. And if you are high bidder and you've sort of pre-bid or you've put your proxy bid in there and you see like bids coming in, but they're still not close to yours, but that's getting a little closer, getting a little anxious. And then my bid sort of stuck and the countdown was on 5, 4, 3, and it went down. And right at the last second, I got outbid and lost the 9.2 by a few dollars. Like it was really close, and I was really disappointed. And sometimes when that happens, I will overreact and I will go and find the book elsewhere or try and get some deal. But I was sort of obsessing with this book and A grade at a price. And it just so happened that the Comic Monster put up this book, and it was at a lesser grade. It was not a 9.2. This isn't an 8.5. But still at that 8.5 grade and price point, I felt like I got a really, really good value. And I have one copy of this book raw in my collection, and this is definitely one of these sort of childhood memory books where I remember seeing this great Frank Miller art on the side of Golden Apple Comics way back in the day. And whenever I would go to Golden Apple and see that painted on the side of the building, I was always just in awe in the larger than life picture of Wolverine. And this is Wolverine #1 in an 8.5 white pages, which if I am going to go for a lesser grade, a lesser than a 9.8, I always try to make sure that I can secure a white pages whenever I can. And I really thought this was a beautiful book. It's slightly miswrapped, so maybe not the most perfect copy for me, but I love it. I really thought that this was a solid deal. And it's one of those where I've thought about this book basically my entire life as a comic book collector and have not had a presentable copy like this. So this is my very first copy of Wolverine #1. And with the market being the way that it is right now, these are the kind of books that I'm starting to look at. I'm looking at the drop off on the 9.8s, but the serious drop off on everything under a 9.8. And that's what's very, very surprising, but also it puts me in a good position because I consider myself to be kind of an aggressive collector. And I always want to make sure that if I'm going to secure a copy like this, that it has great presentation. Again, the white pages. And I can't believe I'm holding this in my hands, honestly. This is really, really cool. It takes me back to that moment where I'm looking up at the wall next to Golden Apple Comics and just it's like one of the very few things in life that allow me to time travel. So I'm really, really happy to add this to my collection. And also what this does is it serves as a little bit of motivation, but also helps kind of calm those FOMO feelings, right? Because I don't have to now overly obsess with trying to find that 9.2 again at that price. I've got a very, very solid copy here, but I can also use this as kind of a reminder to say, maybe I'll pay more attention and keep a better lookout for an upgrade opportunities. But this book in particular, which there's plenty of these out there at all grades. So there's a lot of different price points to fit your budget. But I'm just, I love having this book in my collection. So again, great service, great turnaround time from the Comic Monster. I definitely want to check them out on eBay. I'd highly recommend them. Let me show you what I paid for these books so you can kind of see what are the market prices for some of these where we've got, an independent story that's not really looked at. A book like this where it's very, very well known and iconic, but there's a lot of them out there. And then a couple of books from, I would say, speculator past that have come down to earth at a more reasonable price. So let me show you what I paid for these slabs and why I decided to go ahead and invest in these comics that are already certified. Okay, here is the order breakdown of the two orders. I know it looks like three, but two orders, one from the Comic Monster on eBay and one from Port City Comics on eBay. The reason I split up the Comic Monster order into two separate sections, if you will, of my comic book collection ledger is because of the shipping. The shipping in total was $21. I just didn't feel it was fair to divide that $21 shipping by 6 and apply it to the Star Wars High Republic single issues. So that's why it just looks a little bit different here. But if you kind of think about it as two separate orders, an order for the 2 slabs, order for the 4 raw books. I don't think I've really ordered a set of slabs and raw books together and had to pay for shipping. So I ended up just kind of splitting it up. Again, just kind of walking you through my own madness here, but essentially paid $142.03 for the 2 slabs and $14.32 for the 4 raw books. And then from Port City, I paid $125.48 for the 2 slabs. And you can see in column L, my final bid, as all of these items were auctions. I won Descender number 1 for $27, and I won Wolverine number 1, the 8.5, for $89. Again, to kind of recover from my 9.2 that I think I lost out at around 120. So I felt like this $89 pickup was pretty good. And then the High Republic, I said $2 to $3, really closer to $1 to $2 here, especially getting number 10 for $2.25. You could see the fair market value of that book. Raw is $12, and then the other ones $4, $5, $6. Not too bad. Again, nothing earth-shattering. I just like to continue to buy these and amass them in close to 9.8 or at 9.8 as possible. And then Silk number 2, I ended up winning that for $51. And Encoded number 1, I was the only bidder on that book at $49.99. So very quickly, just comparing these sort of fair market value and CGC values here. You can grab Descender number 1 for around $7.50 according to cover price. And in a 9.8, CGC value is $34.27, and I ended up winning it for $27. When you're looking at the total cost here, it's $40.02 to specifically acquire the book after tax and shipping. And I understand that that's not really built into the equation in terms of what a fair market value of a book is, because if you're buying it in person, are you going to factor in gas money that where you drove to the LCS or the convention to pick it up? I know that we don't really track values in that way, but I like to see in total what I paid for it. So in terms of what I paid in column Z, around $40 to acquire a book worth about $34 in a 9.8. For me, Descender it came out in 2015. I still consider it a hold. I think all things Jeff Lemire are great collectibles and investments as some of his properties turn into live action. So I think that's a keeper for me anyway. But a very affordable $30 to $40 9.8. Wolverine #1 is a little bit more interesting just because there's so many of those books in so many different grades. The cover price fair market value is reported at 126, and again, the way that I do that is I look at the fair market value of the book in near mint condition or the highest fair market value across any grade, and I take the greater of the two because typically I'm buying raw books in near mint. Now, an 8.5 is not near mint, I understand. So the fair market value here doesn't really apply since it's already slab, but just wanted to put that out there if you just want to get on eBay and say, you know what, forget an 8.5, I want this book in a 9.4 or 9.6, I'll just buy it raw, I'll press it, I'll get a 9.8 out of it, and you'll somehow put your pressing and cleaning skills to work. I don't know. But even in a high grade, the book's running somewhere between $80, $100, $120, something like that. So I felt like I'd already could get it slabbed and encased and encapsulated at an 8.5 for $89, that final bid. In an 8.5, it has a CGC value of $116. So even after shipping, taxes, that increased my cost overall to $102.02, it was still under fair market value for an 8.5. So that one I really felt like I got a great deal and was the complete highlight of this unboxing for sure. These raw books, very quickly, the High Republic, I don't know if they have any value yet in a 9.8. We can certainly check just to see for fun. You know, again, nothing shocking or outrageous here, anywhere from 32.50 all the way up to 59. 59 for a 9 and 58 for 10. It seems a little backwards. I think 10 is just really not well known as a High Republic key quite yet. You can definitely see it in the fair market value, but in the 9.8 value at $58. But again, if you're thinking about a total cost over here of after tax and shipping to acquire the book, still under cover price, which is great. If these were all 9/8 and sent them in and it cost me somewhere around $25 to slab them, so let's say about $30, I'm still, even though it's a small amount, it would still be a positive gain if I were to get those books all back in a 9.8. Lastly, the two books from Port City, the Silk #2 9.8 CGC value is $66.50. After tax and shipping, it was a total cost of $63.25 to acquire that book. So paid right around fair market value to get that book in a 9.8. And again, it's about the acquisition of the book, but the guarantee of it being in a 9.8 rather than saying, hey, I think I can get this raw copy for around $30 or maybe at ratio for $25. Maybe I can send it in for grading. Maybe it'll get a 9.8. Do I have to put it in a pre-screen? And I just skipped all of that and went right to the 9.8 and got it for a total cost of $63.25. And then I picked up the encoded #1 9.8 for around the same price at a total cost of $62.24. That one is a little bit more interesting because the CGC value is less at $38.50, but also there are only 11 of the encoded #1 variant covers on the census, with only 2 being sold recently that are affecting kind of the reported fair market value. One of those purchases is mine. So that's the other thing that always kind of messes with me, is if I'm buying books that maybe don't sell that often, then my purchase where I feel like I'm getting a deal is actually pulling the fair market value down. So it's not like I want to overpay for a book to push the fair market value up, but there's part of me that gets weirded out by that my purchase on a book like encoded #1 can specifically affect these values where it looks like I overpaid because I underpaid where the value was pulled. I don't know. I'm losing my mind at this point about it. But nevertheless, you could see the fair market value of the book raw is $17. So again, if you're thinking about the grading fees on top of that and the Rose Besh Silk too, if you just look at the fair market value and look at column U versus column V, you can kind of see, if you're doing the math at home, that shipping plus CGC grading fee is pretty much the difference here. And again, if this is the way that the market is headed, where you've got raw books at a certain price, and you're thinking, well, this could be a 9.8 or a 9.8 candidate, and then you're thinking about those additional fees, it's like when you've got a book that you can pick up for $20 raw that you think is a 9.8, and the 9.8 is around $50, you may as well get the 9.8 if you intend to submit it. And that's kind of where I'm at. And that's what I'm looking at these things is trying to find these deals at auction where I'm getting the guaranteed grade. So kind of back to my original question is like, is this a good time to be submitting any books for grading at CGC on your own, or is this a great time to buy them already graded? Is this a good time to not buy anything and let the market continue to slide and maybe buy a year from now? That's a great observation and thought as well. And it's not that my strategy has really changed all that much. It is still find already graded certified books at auction at a deal, or extremely low risk raw books with a high ceiling and a high potential. I've always kind of operated in that way and really tried to steer clear of paying like what I would consider to be extreme market value for a graded copy. Like, you just kind of have to wait sometimes for the deals to come to you. And certainly in the case of like Wolverine #1, I'm still going to be on the lookout for a better copy, but I don't have to necessarily rush or panic anymore. There's plenty of those books out there. And there's also plenty of the books like Silk too that, were hot at one point that have really kind of fallen off and forgotten. And those people that came into the hobby that identified certain styles of books or artists that they wanted to really target for flipping, and people have just stopped. Maybe they're losing money at flipping, or they've moved on and went back to sports cards. I don't know where they went, but there's something I really enjoy when I can find a book like Silk 2 or Encoded 1 that I know were being looked at or targeted for flipping opportunities, or I don't want to say like hyped or pumped or whatever, but there was just a lot of attention given to books like that. And I love kind of circling back later when I still have an appreciation for those books. Everyone just seems to be operating with a short attention span, and it's just really satisfying to come full circle and acquire books just like that. Thank you for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.